Hello, Northern Lights Publishing welcomes you to RoundTable 360 with your host and moderator, Joseph Carrabas. RoundTable 360 brings together people in the creative fields, dancers, thespians, poets, actors, musicians, authors, and others from across the globe in conversation about things that are relevant, irrelevant, serious, and fun. Today's session is Supplies Limited, Talent. Is talent required to be creative? Is it required to make a living by your creations? Some people don't know and don't care. They follow their muses and to hell with all others. Some consider it a holy grail, an unobtainable thing of great value, mystical and financial. Today's guests include creative leader across Hollywood with 25 plus years experience, Tristan, senior 3D artist and voiceover artist, Kyle Goulet, wordsmith, author, and editor, Sally Chetwynd, and a host of others. Stay with us and enjoy. Hello and welcome, everyone. Thank you for being here today to take part in the Roundtable. Today's topic is Supplies Limited, Talent. Yes, I am reading it. Is talent required to be creative? We have a host of brilliant people today who will tell us it is or is not. Is it required to make a living by your creations? I hope to find out. Some people don't know and don't care. They follow their muses and to hell with all others. Some consider it a holy grail, an unobtainable thing of great value, mystical and financial. Speaking for myself, I find it a very desirable thing. I enjoy being creative. Let's find out what everyone else has to say about it. Who wants to go first? Raise your hand or just blather it out. Kyle, please.
So I think in broad strokes, creativity is ultimately a human experience. It is us seeking to further our understanding of ourselves and each other. So I find that artistic, creative endeavor to be a deeply philosophical one, but unavoidably intersects with technology. I think it begs the question with its integration in creativity, what it means to be human and to be creative, and what that means with the new tools that we have, seeing them sort of come in to supplement that creativity, and for some people's motivations to fully replace that. And that is becoming more and more of an existential question than ever before.
You've packed an awful lot in a few short seconds. Tell me the existential question.
Are we necessary for the creative process? And which calls into question basically the history of, I think it begs the question, what is humanity's part in art? Is art necessary? Is it an important part of the human experiment? Which my personal view is that it is. I think it is a reflection of the way we see ourselves and sort of what we value, would be my shortest possible answer.
Very good. Does anybody want to counter what Kyle, obviously brilliant, has said?
I want to applaud. I think you got right to the nitty-gritty of it, Kyle. And the only thing I would have probably thrown in is a reference to Wittgenstein and the ineffable, and then talk about the Greeks and the meaning of awe and the meaning of gods or transcendent effects. But I think you got right at. The only question is, and I think this is really, does any of what you said or what I'm saying matter when we're talking about a 13-year-old kid in 8th grade or whatever, who's got his colored pencils and is happily creating his comic book or his graphic novel, I guess we call it now, that is going to blow everybody's mind because he's created this wonderful character who's blah, 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 blah. And, I guess the question is, do we want to talk about the intellectual nature of creativity, or do we want to talk about the practicality of what it is we're trying to do in interacting with real life people? Or to put it a little differently as a shrink, which is more important, the MFA, the Master in Fine Arts, or the art therapist in the psych hospital?
I
And I think they're both important.
I think you're missing an individual, and that's the one who goes to the bank. You know, I I've said this many times. I work really hard to be able to pay my bills based on my income as a creative person. And all of us in the room have bills to pay. All of us are creative. There were points where I had to find a side job, which became the main job, so I could be creative in the off hours. You know, I don't make my money by being on a stage playing piano or guitar. I do make my money sitting down at a keyboard, basically in isolation. But I have not yet had the experience where recognizing I have to go to the bank changes my ability to be creative. I think that's significant. I think that's what Kyle was getting to. And correct me if I'm incorrect there, Kyle. So yeah, we can have our therapists, we can have other people, but the end game is, can we be creative and pay our bills? Or
Well,
am
I
I?
think I would no, I think that's I mean that's important within our current context, right? And I think to Mr. Ween's point, which is more important, the art therapist or the artist? I think it's all together. I think it's a very not necessarily pejoratively, but American viewpoint. Which one's the best? But it's all part of the artistic whole of the experience. Because if the world ended tomorrow and humans were living in caves, we'd still make music. Even if we didn't have bills to pay, we'd still paint on walls. That is part of what we are. It doesn't, the context surrounding it changes the way it's viewed and valued, but that's ephemeral compared to what art and creativity is at the core of us as living animals.
John, you bring up an interesting sort of dilemma. You do bring up an interesting dilemma that I think a lot of artists struggle with for a couple of reasons. There are some people who are very creative, but I don't want to say aren't good at it. They feel very creative, they feel very expressive, but they're not making Mozart. You know what I mean? It's just like, it's not in the cards for them. You know, I have friends and family members who really feel like a creative person and they're like, look what I made. And you're like, but you'll never sell it. And it's tough for them. And those people sort of find themselves as hobbyists and they sell stuff on Etsy or, whatever it is they're doing for their art. I was in a weird position growing up because I was super obviously creative. I was horrible in school. I didn't like it. I didn't want to be there. It was a waste of my time. Everything I wanted to do wasn't what school was doing. I wanted to draw, but my interests shifted every 4 or 5 years to whatever the culture was doing or whatever I thought I could make money in. From 5, it was drawing on my bedroom walls. And then by 10, it was like maybe more elaborate comics, and it just kept sort of escalating. But I kind of kept shifting. I was very young thinking about how can I do this for a living? Kind of to your point, how can I go to the bank and withdraw money because I'm creative? And it sort of culminated in seeing Jurassic Park when I was 14. And I didn't know what that was because the term CG hadn't been invented yet. And so I went from like working in Halloween shops as a 13, 14-year-old in the country thinking I'll make masks for movies. That'll be awesome. But then I saw Jurassic Park and I go, I don't know what that is, but I'm going to do that. And so I never went to school for it. I made a very deliberate moved out when I was 17, took a $3,000 loan out from a bank with a personal loan to buy a computer and a VHS tape to learn a piece of software called Softimage, taught myself. I was working professionally within 18 months, eventually authored books on 3D and turned it into a 27-year career or whatever, worked in film and games and the stuff I'm doing today. But I did make a conscious effort to monetize along the way. And let's say I would have been stubborn. My student counselor they said, what do you want to be when you grow up? And I said, an artist. And she said to me, and I'll never forget it because I was 15, she said, what are you going to do? Move to San Francisco and paint people on the street? And it was such a disgusting thing to say to a 15-year-old. And I was like, well, screw you. And it was like the driving force for the rest of my life to prove this person wrong. But yeah, there's a bit of a pickle there with monetizing your creativity that is very difficult for most people.
Excellent, Tristan. Thank you. I want to have Donna enter the conversation. And just prior to that, you were recognizing the need to monetize. That was very obviously so because you got a $3,000 loan at the age of 17.
Yeah.
Personally, I don't know of too many 17-year-olds when I was 17 in high school or these days who are thinking, I need to get a loan, probably need a cosigner. I'm going to have support from someone, but that's tremendous, and congratulations on being able to do that as a career for 27 years.
It was a horrible interest rate, by the way. But I probably paid $14,000 for that. But
you're still paying it off, yes. Okay.
yeah, I'm still paying it off. It's like
the student loan.
pulling it. But I mean, the way I looked at it too was because of my thoughts on education and the fact that the cost of education has gotten more expensive, even though the cost of information has gotten cheaper, which never makes any sense to me. So I thought, well, why would I pay $40,000 to go to school when I could just teach myself for $3,000? So to me, I was getting a good deal. So that's why
You were, definitely.
That's why I pulled the trigger.
Donna, please.
Hi. You're bringing up one of the points that I wanted to make today, which is how to choose your occupation. What the advice, I guess, that I liked was choose an occupation that uses as many of your abilities as you can find, and you'll be happy and you'll probably be good at it. The bottom line, wanting to be a creative, is it's a luxury to make a living at it, and most of us don't. So I feel very lucky that I usually said I was a kept woman. You know, my husband had a good job and I was free to pursue my writing, and fortunately I'm still doing it and enjoying it. And I think that was really great advice. You know, if you use your talents, the chances are you'll be happy with what you're doing and you'll never work a day of your life. But paying the bills, that's something else again.
Definitely. Sally, please.
Yeah, I've been kind of noodling on this MFA versus art psychotherapist thing. I don't really think creatives need either one. I mean, if you're a creative, you're a creative. You don't need an MFA program to prove it. It might help you get, better work or, some position that you
I'm
choose.
sorry, I was talking about what we think of as being art, whether
Yeah.
it's helping people to grow as individuals or is it creating art. And I was just using those as kind
Yeah.
of.
But yeah, I just don't see a need for creatives, and we're all creatives, some of us to greater degrees than others. We're all creatives entirely, everybody on Earth. Most of us have been squelched by others telling us what we should do, what we should think, what we should create, what we should write, or we shouldn't do this, we shouldn't do that. It's like, I work with seniors in my community. With a bunch of us, we run a senior writing workshop, and it's become something that's a safe space for these people who have been wanting to put something down their whole lives, or if they have, they've never dared show it to anybody. This is a place where they can show it. They can write it down. They can share it with us. We can even post it online for them in the newsletter that we've got, and it's a marvelous thing. These people have amazing stories, and they shouldn't feel put down or less than anybody else. Nobody else can tell you what your story is. Nobody else has the authority over your story, your words. And I try to encourage that in people I work with.
If
I would
could-
love to bounce off that if I can, because I think that is a hugely important point, is that everybody, I think there is creativity in everybody. I think to Tristan's earlier point, not everybody can pay the bills with the creative output that they feel. But I think so often, Sally, to your point, is that young child who has the explosive creativity to create whatever they can imagine gets stifled by parents and teachers and peers who live in a society where everything is valued based on how much money you can make. So, you know, you make a small drawing and then your parent says, what are you going to do? Sell paintings in LA. And then you immediately go, oh, I guess that's dumb. And then they get it in their heads. Oh, I'm not a creative person. I don't have a talent. I don't have a vision or a story to tell. I guess I'll become a finance person, which is fine. That's, you know, part of our society. But I think your point is spot on, that it is something that is squelched and crushed within young people. But everybody has that capacity.
Yeah, that's something I'm super, I mean, if we talk about this enough, you'll hear me drone on about school, and it's quite a lot, but he might have been saying it from somebody else, but I think it was Sir Ken Robinson, who does some great lectures on education and creativity. He's got an amazing lecture called How Schools Kill Creativity, but it's, you know, there's a line in there somewhere where he says something to the effect of, everyone's born creative, they go to school to lose it. That's probably been, you know, quoted a few different ways by several different people, but yeah, I mean, all kids are creative. They're building sandcastles and they're doing cool little things, and it's really tough. Even if you're a parent who's supportive, everything else around the kid is just this pressure of like doctor, lawyer, and all these other things. And, you know, to that point, you can be a creative doctor. You know, you have to be creative to be certain doctors. You can be a creative plumber. You can be a creative, lots of things. There's lots of ways to express your creativity, but yeah, they really do try and put you in a box when you get into the world, and it is super difficult. You have to have I mean, part of it's personality. You have to have a very strong personality when you're young to tell all the adults in the room that they're wrong and that they don't know what they're talking about, and I'm going to go my own way and, you know, do what I got to do. It's tough. It's a lot of pressure.
So Tristan, I'm sorry, I don't know how to raise my hand on this computer. It's not mine. But Tristan, what did your
Yeah.
How did your parents differ in their feedback to you that either encouraged you or discouraged you to do what you wanted to do at such a young age?
They didn't. I left home. I mean, I left home to pursue all of it. I mean, for lack of a better expression, just gave everyone the double bird and left. I left at a young age, and it was difficult. But I grew up in a very rural part of Illinois, nothing but farmers. I was very aware at the ceiling I had growing up, because most everyone around me was quite poor, and not for a lack of talent, but the fact is, if you don't live near a city, there's probably a ceiling. You're going to either be a nurse at the local hospital, which my mother was, or you might be a school teacher and make $29,000 a year. That's rough. So my mom was a nurse. My sister was a school teacher. My dad worked at a construction company, you know, broken back, you know, the whole thing. Never had a lot of money. We're on food stamps at points. And I just was like, this is going to sound funny, but I used to watch TV and see, it's not like this there anymore. I lived there and worked in Hollywood for a long time, but I used to see California on TV and just gasp at, people actually live there. Somebody lives there. How can I get there? That's all I thought about from like 8 till 17. It just seemed so amazing to me that you could have there are palm trees on Earth and someone can live where there's a palm tree. Like I had a cornfield in my backyard. And so it was just, I was so enamored with that and the possibility, I had to get to the nearest city. And so I moved towards Chicago, and then later St. Louis, then San Diego, LA, and then I lived overseas for a long time as well. But again, that's tough. That takes a lot. And to be honest, most people won't do it, even if they think they have the headstrong sort of personality to do it. That's lonely. You got to move to a city by yourself at 17 with no money. I didn't have a bed for like the first 8 years. You know, I was working odd jobs trying to teach myself 3D on this overpriced Sony Vaio computer. Yeah, but I just thought it was worth it. And I thought I could pull it off in the end. And it was, you know, it was the smartest thing I ever did. Now my parents are, of course, like, oh, this is great. This worked out really well. But they told me to do all the things. They said, you know, by 25, you should have a fiance. By 30, you should own a home. And I'm like, and what? Work at the local butcher shop? This just is not in the cards for me. I can't do it. So, yeah, it's difficult.
Ali put something in the chat, which was, it takes chops to do this, to be creative. and to not only, let me change that slightly. It doesn't take chops to be creative, because I agree with Kyle. Everybody can be creative. Children are creative. The first, Neanderthals who said, I'm going to draw something. And as an anthropologist, I looked at cave drawings around the world, and it reminds me of Picasso. One smooth line, and you know immediately what it was. These people were not like, what do I do? No, these were amazingly talented people who, I'm guessing, cracked a lot of rocks. That one doesn't look good. So I agree, it does take chops. It takes perseverance. It takes belief. And this, to me, cycles back to something Tristan said early in the conversation about somebody in their family does something and says, what do you think? Yeah, well, it looks great, but you'll never sell it. How do you know? Everybody on this conversation, everybody in this Zoom room believed they had talent. The fact that they are here proves they have talent. How do you know you have talent when, as many of us have said, everyone around you, every adult, every college teacher, every high school teacher is saying, yeah, that's great. And, what are you going to do? Speaking for myself, in my high school yearbook, it was, I was listed as most likely to be stacking cans at a North Country IGA. And I've got patents. I've traveled the world. I've created technology. Yeah, much like Tristan and much like many others, I'll bet, I was freaking bored out of my mind. So I just went my own way. So
the boredom is overwhelming when you're, especially being a female, and it's less appropriate to go your own way and do your own thing and, sleep on the floor because you don't have a mattress. Like, you're like, oh, if it's a guy, oh, you're rugged. If it's a girl, Donna, you can disagree with me. I mean, if it's a girl, you're, oh, I mean, what are you, like, trashy? Like, nobody's going to be like, wow, you were awesome. And yeah, it was expected. You grow up, you go to college, you have a job, you get married, you have children. But I was literally bored out of my mind. Like, I called it driving in circles. Like, I drove in circles all day, and I tried to be creative with my food and creative with my house and creative with my garden and creative with my business. And to the outside world, I looked very successful. On the inside, I was bored out of my mind. And, it's like, well, what do I do now? And so I was always like, oh, let me find something new. Let me find something new. Let me find something new. And I got both my kids, out of high school into college. They're on their own. Now I'm like, okay, now it's time for me to go do something that's going to be long-standing instead of let me find something new every year or two.
Can I ask a generational question here? I'm kind of a little confused because, okay, the other day I was having lunch with a friend of mine, he and his son and my son, and his son has just graduated college and he's going into the movie industry. And we're sitting around there talking about possibilities and careers. And my friend's daughter wants to go into music management, and we had a conversation with her about that. And it seems to me now, I felt very unique as a parent. When David came to my wife actually and said, I want to learn to develop film. I mean, we go back that long that he was actually taking film cameras, developing. And, she said, okay, let's set up a darkroom, because she knew how. And she thought, it was never a question of how are you going to earn a living at that for us. But we were unique. When other people heard we were doing that, and they were saying, well, why aren't you teaching them a trade? Now, I have a lot of people I know who are a lot younger than I am. They're young enough to be my children, really. And their kids are being encouraged. And I'm sitting here listening to this conversation about what happened to us, but I'm wondering if it's still happening today. Because I think a lot of kids today, they're being encouraged, they're being told, oh, you want to be a creative? Be a creative. And I think that's changing the world, hopefully in a positive way. Hopefully.
Donna, you had something you wanted to add?
Yeah, I wanted to address the word talent. That isn't something that I would ever have thought of applying to myself. I think it's something that other people can apply if they want to. I didn't care. I just wanted to do what I wanted to do. And I did it. I didn't give the word talent 1 second of thought.
It's tough too with the talent side of things. You could say it's relative, I suppose, but in the beginning, most of us aren't very good at the talent. So the talent grows, right? So like you're drawing better. If you're a writer, you're writing better at 40 than you were at 20, and you're writing better at 60 than you were at 40, you know? So there's also that brutal part of the creative process, or actually for most of us, if you are creative, it's part of the fun part of the process, but you get better at it. I wasn't particularly amazing at anything when I was a kid thinking I wanted to be creative. I just knew I was creative and I was making stuff, and maybe it was slightly better than the kid next to me or something. But you know, you stack 20 or 30 years of experience onto that with sort of an inclination to be creative, and the fact that you've been working on it for a long time. You know, even my father, like the house I grew up in, he built. I would argue that that's probably very creative. I mean, he and his dad drew up blueprints by hand and built the house we grew up in. And it's still there today. You know, it's a brick house. It's quite okay. Which is sort of to my point too, like plumbers can be creative, like anybody can kind of be creative. And I actually like to go out of my way to point that out. A lot of creative people, because most of us are like, we're making images or videos or writing or music and all this kind of stuff. But you can be in a vocation and be very creative and make amazing buildings and figure out a creative way to do this water treatment plant that no one else has ever come up with before. And look how efficient it is. That's definitely another way to flex into that creative sort of inclination.
Tristan, I'm actually sort of the opposite of you. I grew up right outside of Washington, D.C., so I was surrounded by everything from all over the world. And I recently bought quite a bit of land in a rural part of North Carolina. So cool. I think I live beside your,
yeah.
And when you first look at these people or talk to these people, you don't think there's a whole lot of creativity going on there. But once you start asking, like, well, how do I do this? And how do I make this? And instead of this costing $5,000, it can cost $500 because you can be creative.
Totally.
And, you know, and these farmers, these rural farmers who also probably like your dad, they had jobs and they were farmers because that's how they supported their families. They are really creative with stuff.
Yeah, for sure.
But you have to like know them and trust them and get inside.
Exactly. Sally, you have something for us?
Yeah, and speaking to those farmers, they have to know and trust you before they share a lot of secrets.
Yeah, I get really cool secrets.
I was thinking about, you know, the topic of boredom, being bored in jobs. And I was always impressed with a fellow that I saw who was literally a cleaner at Bath Iron Works 40 years ago when I was working there. I was doing pipe fitting, and this guy was in the maintenance shop. So he's literally pushing a broom all day, picking up, you know, metal shavings and drips from welding stuff and bits of iron and sawdust, all kinds of junk. And I was talking to him one day, and I said something like, "Do you find the job boring? Because it's not particularly creative." He says, "Oh, it's boring, all right." He says, all day long when I'm pushing this broom around, he says, I'm working on my book in my head, and I go home at night and I write all that stuff down." He says, "I sort out lots of stuff during the day." So there's different ways of being creative.
Yes, definitely. John?
Yeah, to what Kenneth was saying earlier, the parents pushing their kids to be creative with whatever avenue they want is made help possible by the fact that there's so many tools available at the entry level that can do what took a dark room and expensive film and equipment back then. So, you can try out whatever you want. You want to learn piano? Sure, there's probably an app on your iPad that can do that. You want to do photography? Your phone. My old phone can do that just as good as an old camera could do. So it's definitely opened up the world to people who you wouldn't think as being creative to try something different. You can go to Best Buy, open up a credit card, and have everything there to make Jurassic Park right now,
Yeah.
for a couple $1,000s. The software is there. The free tutorials are there on YouTube. There's forums and stuff like that where people will help you with these problems. So all it takes is just a little bit of like time to be like, huh, what does this world look like? And let me spend a week or two exploring it a bit. And I've seen people who literally just pick up Blender and in like 2 weeks have made an animation in that
Yep.
because they said, I'm going to dedicate 2 weeks, 18-hour days, whatever, and learn it. And they're entirely different like people at the end of it because they're like, this whole world to me is so cool and fun and enjoyable, and it's just for themselves. They don't have to sell it. I was never into photography and went through college doing computer animation stuff. And it wasn't until I was well out of college where I was working at CompUSA and they were doing clearance on digital cameras. And I bought one for like $5. And I was like, all right, now I can just shoot whatever I want. Don't have to pay for film or processing. And now I love it. I don't sell anything. I don't try to sell it. It's just for me and sharing with friends.
Yeah, it's a
Yeah.
creative outlet. Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah, I think an interesting definition of terms when we talk about what is creativity and then like separation of creativity and talent is an important delineation of the way we think about it. I think that when you think about what it means to be creative, and we're talking about like obviously I think most of us agree that most humans are creative by natural instinct. And I think the way of looking at it, I think people think of themselves as creative or not versus the way they live their life as them living a creative life, and that is being open to problem solving, seeing a problem and imagining. Because creativity is really just the formation of a solution to a problem using your imagination. And that applies itself to almost anything. Tristan, you've had an incredible life of seeing a problem or something to accomplish and creatively accomplishing that in the way that only you can. And that has led you to success in so many avenues. That all is emblematic of living a creative life. And I think when kids feel like they are wrong and they fear their own imagination as a place for them to be wrong, it's where it shuts down, and then they pay into, or they pay too much lip service to the formula or the script that is given to them. At this age you should have a fiance, at this age you should have a house, and telling you how to live your life. And that's where a little bit of like, we have the billionaire millionaire tastemakers who have decided that in order to be considered a worthy creative, we have to decide that you're worth our money, and anything below that is a hobby, and you shouldn't pursue it because your value is tied to your monetary stuff. I think that ties into a little bit to Kenneth's comment about this generational difference we have, where younger generations are feeling more empowered. I think that, and this is not to cause a generational divide between us, but the Boomer and Gen X generations, it was far more of a safe bet that if you follow the rules and you get a good job and you go to college, that you will have a better life than your parents. And millennials are the first generation to see that sort of start to crack and break, and that promise is less and less true every year. And so I think for this generation and the next generation's kids, there is more of a willingness to be like, I want you to, if you want to be creative, if you want to follow your dreams, you want to make movies, make music, do it. Like, go, just like swing for the fences and go for it. And hopefully at the end of the day, even if they don't get that dream, the path towards that will lead them to something that gives them a sense of accomplishment and satisfaction, and just having somebody to believe in. To Joseph's comment earlier, or question earlier about how do you identify talent, I think part of it has to do with believing in yourself, but that is a bedrock that's built by other people believing in you, whether it's your parents. I was lucky enough to grow up with a twin brother, so like from the word go, we always believed in each other. Like, you support each other. Like, that idea is crazy. I'm going to draw this. And then rather than having someone telling you what you can't, you're just seeing what else someone else can do and raising each other up. And you never, there was never a early point where I felt like someone didn't believe in me. And that was hugely, that is what gave me the gas to feel like you can do anything. So I think that, and then if you don't have that, you do what Tristan did, and you do it out of spite. And spite, people do not give enough credit to how powerful spite can be.
Spite fuel is amazing. Yeah, it's really good.
It's real.
Spite fuel is awesome.
Amy, your hand is up.
Well, that's what I actually think is pretty amazing about Tristan, is you seem to have done it on your own, whereas other people seem to have somebody, whether it's a sibling or a neighbor or their parent or whatever, encouraging them, going, yeah, you can do it, you can do it. My son is 24 right now, so this is to sort of answer the generational question, is there are a lot of expectations for that were placed on him his entire life. Not, I guess some by me. I mean, I was his mom, but there's a lot of expectations from his dad's side of the family to do things that are in no way his personality. And so he's had to always try to think outside the box, quote unquote, the box. And he moved to Hawaii, and he started making surfboards by hand, like the old fashioned way. And in the first year, he made 3 custom-made surfboards for other people and got paid. And I was like, wow, that's really amazing. But doing it in the garage and everything like that, and with the face mask and everything, he was like, wow, this is taking forever. And he just happened to be out surfing, and he was talking to one of the uncles, which is like the person you pay respect to in Hawaii. And the uncle said, well, why are you doing it all by hand? Like, why don't you do this? Why don't you do that? And he's like, well, like, I'm trying to learn how to do it without all the technology. I'm trying to learn how to do it this way so that when I do use the technology, I have both skill sets. And he had absolutely no idea he was talking to the owner of the leading surf shop in Honolulu.
Holy cow. So cool.
And the guy said, bring your stuff, bring your board, come into my shop. He said, he was older. He said, I'll teach you what I know about the old way, and I'll let you use all my stuff for the new way. And that's what he's been doing. I know. I was like, wow.
What a great story.
I know. I was like, well, you're certainly surfing in the right spot.
Yeah. That's so cool.
That's one of those, in my opinion, apocryphal stories where they're great to hear, and they are really, they're lifting kinds of stories. And I also recognize that for every one of those, there's the Tristan who at 17 took out a loan and moved to California. There is, I've known lots of people who became really top of the line. There's a guy I know, Dwayne Cote. He's a Cape Breton fiddler. Guy could play in orchestras if he wanted to. Never wanted to. I even said to him one day, I said, Dwayne, you could be leading the Metropolitan Symphony. Yeah, but I don't want to. So you're happy playing for the seagulls and the lobsters in Christmas Bay? Yeah, well, they don't give me shit. Okay. I totally
maybe
get
the seagulls do.
Yeah, really.
Yeah, the seagulls love it.
But I totally get that. And I know my time when I was traveling through the Appalachians, there are people up there with talent like you can't imagine. Some of the most amazing guitarists that we know today, when they were interviewed, Roy Clark is an example. He was interviewed, and people were saying, "My God, you're just amazing." And he said, "Yeah, but I'm nothing. You got to hear some of the guys back home." Really. But I want to go back to talent. We've been talking about talent. I totally accept that talent is something that is honed, to use an expression. You know, I totally accept, God forbid, if you looked at something I wrote when I was in my 20s, I'd, shoot you. So you never have to tell anybody. But the fact of the matter is, at some point, in my opinion, it's my opinion, at some point, we said everybody else, except for the apocryphal stories, is wrong. We are right. I have the talent. It's wonderful when somebody comes along and says, yeah, wow, you do have talent. Come into my surf shop and we're going to make boards together. That is tremendous. Not everybody has that. And the ones who persevere take chops, as Sally said. I still, to me, I haven't had the answer yet. What is the thing that makes us say, yeah, people may not pay attention to me, but I'm going to do this because let's be honest, we do have to pay bills. It may not be paying my bills, but I'm going to do this. I'm going to get up at 2 a.m. and work until 5, and nobody may ever see it. I consider this against a guy I know. He was writing in 1980s and 1990s. I saw him again, lost touch, saw him again in 2020s. Kevin, you're still writing? Yeah. Have you managed to sell anything? No, that's not right. Yeah, I haven't bothered to submit. Oh, okay. Because, there's this thing now called Amazon. You could sneeze on paper and they would publish it. So if you're not published, there's a real issue. Donna, you had your hand raised for a second?
I did. I was thinking of a different angle on talent and calling it in my head creativity and what you do with it. I've quoted John Gardner before, the author who wrote On Becoming a Novelist. And one of the sentences I refer to in my head is, you can't teach people the arts. Sooner or later, they just catch on. And that was my experience. I think I educated myself any way I could in the basics, the fundamentals of writing. But sooner or later, I just kind of caught on. And now all the rest is internalized. And I draw on it, but I don't think about it. I just know how to do what I've wanted to do. So again, talent, I don't, that's somebody else. They can apply it to me if they want to, but I'm just doing my craft and enjoying it and making myself happy. And fortunately, that's the way you make readers happy too, with something that pleases you, hopefully.
And just so we all know, Donna is amazingly talented. Amy, you're waving your hand. And then we'll have Kyle. So please be patient.
So I would like to sort of talk about the two caveats of talent kind of in your youth. So I coached sports, especially basketball, for most of my life, and I also played competitively. So I've had a lot of different experiences with talent in sports. So I'm going to just tell you this, and then maybe you guys could answer how it relates to you. So when you coach little kids, obviously some have a lot more talent. Some can shoot a basketball or hit a baseball or anything like that, kick a soccer ball, just naturally. Their talent comes naturally. And some kids, their talent isn't as natural, but they have a huge desire. And up until you hit like a prepubescent thing, the kids with a huge desire and the kids with a huge talent, it's hard to differentiate. But the kids that have a tremendous amount of talent and low desire, or too big of an ego, they don't practice as much. So the children that have some talent, more desire, they excel when they hit puberty, because they're like, you know what, if I practice more I have more desire, I have more passion, they end up accelerating over the people with natural talent. And then the ones with talent go, oh my gosh, I better catch up because this person that I used to be better than is better than me. And I want to be the cool person on the team. I want to be the go-to person. So I'm assuming that goes for creatives too. Although I don't have as much experience as that. I mean, I have lifelong experience with sports. So that's the kind of analogy I had. And as coaches, you kind of go like, oh, that kid has too much natural talent. And it sort of makes them lazy sometimes. So I was just wondering how you guys relate to that, or how you see other people that you might know relate to that in your own way.
Kyle, do you have something to add?
Yeah, I mean, I would love to bounce right off of that, because I think that the idea of like talent and like natural aptitude and then drive is so important. Because I think, the rule that I think is true is that the winner is the last one standing. So that the idea of, and I think it's, and I keep drilling in on this. There is this, I think it could be a Western focus, but I tend to think it's an American focus on like, if you're failing, it must be wrong. And the idea to abandon the journey and being willing to fail and finding success at the end of that journey. And I think we have this hyper competitive mindset of like, oh, well, if this person is just naturally better than me, I'm not even going to bother. But the idea being like, if you keep going and pushing through, like you're saying, it only takes a little bit of talent with a lot of drive to reach true excellence. And that journey should be the focus rather than the goal. Oh, I just want to be the best. And if that comes easy to you, when eventually the going gets tough, you might back off of it. I know for me, to use my personal experience as a twin, my twin brother, I think at a very young age was a much more talented artist. He was incredibly creative, came up with these incredible like ideas, and I felt like I was always either copying him or copying something else that I'd seen. But because I had him as a benchmark and I wanted to keep up, it pushed me to keep going. And I don't think I would have gotten there by myself if it had just been my peers and I had felt like I had, no way to push myself or nothing to strive for. So I think that is something that we can use to help lift each other up. Back to Kenneth's point, like the idea of more and more people choosing creative paths today has to do with, looking back now as we, step up in generations, looking back and being willing to be like, you can do it. You can be better than all of us. Like, take what advice I can and take my encouragement to the bank.
Yeah, I'm super interested in this sports side too. I mean, I've been a professional level athlete half my life. I still compete in stuff. My last competition was probably 8 months ago. But my creativity is definitely translated into sports as well, especially on the jiu-jitsu side, coming up with creative ways to do submissions and stuff like that. But to the other point about aptitude and drive, I think it's okay. I think people forget a lot of times that the average person is average. It can't be any other way. The average person is average. And so the average person isn't going to have drive plus aptitude. They might have drive and less aptitude. They might have more aptitude and less drive. The outliers have aptitude and drive. And that's why they're not average. And that's why you get a Michael Jordan or a whoever is the best artist at your studio, or you're the fiddler or whoever Joseph was talking about. You're like, oh my God, this guy's got so much aptitude, but it seems to have very little professional drive. They might have personal drive, like I'm happy playing with the pitches, but they don't have professional drive. They're not really trying to monetize it. And that's okay. And I think it's okay that the average person is average and their creativity manifests itself in an average amount of aptitude or more aptitude and less drive. And I think all of that is perfectly okay. And I don't know if anyone's ever read Malcolm Gladwell's book on outliers. It's like one of the, it's an incredible book. Talks about like even the difference in enrolling your child in sports, like between a 90-day window pre-puberty is like the differentiating factor. You know, most people aren't super athletic, they're average athletic, and so you're just going to be this averagely athletic person, maybe with a lot of drive, and it is what it is. The guy the guy who's 6'2", who's jumping over you, it's like there's nothing I can do about this. He's just going to dunk on me constantly. Yeah.
Wasn't there some guy on a pro basketball team? I think it was New York. He was like 5'7", and he was wiping
Spud
everybody
Webb.
else. Yeah,
Spud
wiping
Webb,
everybody else off the
talk
court.
about aptitude for days. I mean, he was dunking on people that were 2 feet taller than.
Yeah.
Yeah, crazy amount of aptitude. Yep.
Yeah.
Amy, did you want to say something? Sorry, I see your hand.
Oh, Joseph was talking.
Oh,
Yeah, but Joseph talks too much. Go ahead, Amy.
Okay, so yeah, so the athletic part, yeah, I was super athletic. I was always like the captain of my teams doing this, but then when I had to go coach other people's children who, my kids went to a private school, so I got to coach preppy little white girls with cute ponytails. And they really just didn't have the drive that I had. And I was like, I had to overcome the kill or be killed attitude, because that was how I played on the court. I mean, off the court, I was like, oh, hi, let's be friends. On the court, I was like, I will run through you. And you can't tell little kids that. So I had to be really creative. And one of the thing that a lot of them still talk about is they were 4th graders and we were in a 5th grade league and we didn't know it. And we got to play everybody twice. And the first go around, we got crushed. I mean, like crushed, absolutely. And so they didn't want to play. They were like, oh, we're terrible. We're horrible. We don't want to play basketball anymore. And I was like, no, we're going to play everybody again. And we're going to suck less. Like, I didn't say it to them. I said it to myself. And they were like, and so I taught them all kinds of really cool, creative things so that we would lose by less in the next game. And the best part of it was we surprised all the other teams by all the cool, creative stuff that we learned, which were genuine basketball skills. And when my girls walked out, I mean, we were congratulating each other like we did an awesome job. And the other teams were confused because we still lost. But it completely transformed the entire team. And the next year they came out and they were at the top. We went to the top, and they had a lot of compassion for the other kids that didn't know how to play.
Kyle, I'm gonna give you the final word, and then we're going to say thanks to everybody. So,
well, something that I think your unresolved question about, like, where does talent become identified? Like, how do you know if it's not, like, you have these apocryphal stories of someone sort of like with an expertise touching on the shoulder and being like, I bestow upon you confidence. But I think in those instances and those where it is self-driven, it comes from your output, your creative and genuine output, drawing an honest emotional response from someone or yourself. Now, finding it in yourself also requires the self-awareness to be aware of it and be like, oh, that rocked. That was awesome. That drew a true emotional response from me. But I think to anybody who has worked on something and used a creative output and had a real, true emotional response from somebody else of, wow, that was amazing. Or in Amy's example, the students feeling like, oh, wow, we did it. And everybody being surprised. That emotion, that response of like, okay, I put in effort. I put in myself. And then the response I got from that told me that it was real. And I think that sparks your compass to know where your talent lies. Whatever your strength is as the output for your creativity, that is where talent gets identified within yourself. And a lot of it, I think, for most people, I think it does require an external, either negative, and it can be a negative response to Tristan's backstory. It can be out of spite. It can be the emotional response, it can be an honest response of someone else who maybe is older, maybe they were told that they can't be creative and that that's not a real path. And so when they pass that on to you from a true place of bitterness, you can feed onto that and be like, oh, well, you're wrong. I can tell you're wrong. And I'll prove it to you. And then you just latch onto that, and that becomes the gas for your talent.
Well, that's that's profound. It kind of reminds me of the spite element, as being one of the drivers. We've been at this for about an hour, and I appreciate, Ken, you have your hand up, but I'm gonna call it. I think we've had a very good discussion. Thank you, Tristan, Kyle, John, everyone, Sally, Donna, Kenneth, Joseph, and Amy, of course. I hope you'll all be able to come back next time. Please do remember to send me your emails. Thank you all. Take care. See you next time.
Thank you, everyone. Much appreciated.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you for watching Roundtable 360, where creatives from diverse fields and across the globe gather to discuss what's relevant, irrelevant, serious, and fun. Roundtable 360 is brought to you by Northern Lights Publishing. Our shows are taped the last Thursday of every month at 1:30 p.m. Hawaiian Time, 4:30 p.m. Mountain Time, 7:30 p.m. Eastern Time, 12:30 a.m. London Time, 1:30 a.m. CEST, and whatever time that converts to wherever you are. Please join us. Get your invite at http://nlb.pub/roundtable. See you next time, and until then, stay safe and well.